Good morning, church. Welcome to a new day of our reading and year of the Word. Today, we are fast forwarding in the book of Ezekiel to chapter 18. If you remember, yesterday we looked at the beginning of Ezekiel chapter 2, and we saw the call of God on Ezekiel's life, and we saw Ezekiel answer God's call. But here we fast forward to Ezekiel 18, and really the premise of this chapter can be summed up by saying that everyone is responsible for their own sin, that everyone is accountable for their sin and their lives. And Ezekiel, and God speaking to Ezekiel here, it says, "The word of the Lord came to me," and Ezekiel writes these things down, what the Lord had told him, and he presents these different scenarios that if a man is sinful and if a man transgresses against God, if he worships idols, if he turns away from the Lord, then surely he will die. And then he contrasts that by saying, "But a man who is righteous and does what is right, if he does not lift his eyes to idols, if he does not oppress anyone, if he does not do all of these things, then surely he will live." But then he presents the idea of relational guilt, and he says that a father is not responsible for his son's guilt as well as his son is not responsible for his father. And he presents these scenarios where he says if a father is righteous and if a father is holy and doesn't turn from God, but then he has a son who transgresses, and if he has a son who is violent and a son who sheds blood, is the father responsible for the sins of the son? And he answers and says, absolutely not. And then he twists that and says, if there's a father who is a transgressor and a father who worships idols and who commits robbery and who does not and who takes profit and lends interest in money and does injustice, but then that father has a son who is righteous and who is holy, is that son held accountable for the father's sins? And once again, he says, absolutely not. And so we see here in the premise of Ezekiel chapter 18 is that every person, every singular person is responsible for their own sin. And we must all individually make the decision to turn to God and to follow Him and to place our faith in Him and to walk with Him in obedience. This can kind of be summed up right here in verse 20, where it says that the soul who sins shall die. The son shall not suffer for the iniquity of the father, nor the father suffer for the iniquity of the son. The righteousness of the righteous shall be upon himself, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon himself. And while many of us may not worship idols or fall into some of these sins that the people of Israel were, we do see many times in our culture that people who have gone to church all their lives, or because their parents were believers, or even parents because their children were righteous people and were believers, they counted that as faith and righteousness for themselves. And here out of Ezekiel 18, we see that that is false, that we are all responsible for our sin, that we all are accountable for the sins of our lives, regardless of those who come before us or who come after us. And so I want to encourage you today to place your faith in Jesus, to not look to any relational aspect of those around you who maybe were in church before you, or those who came after you who were believers or who went to church or who were baptized or whatever it is. But the true mark of righteousness, the true way we can gain righteousness, is through faith in Jesus Christ. And so I hope today that you have placed your faith in Jesus and you have not counted yourself faithful because of anyone else but yourself, because we are all accountable and responsible for our own sins. So I hope that you enjoy reading today Ezekiel chapter 18, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning.